Rain was hitting the windows of the small coffee shop on Baker Street. It was just another Tuesday morning, and David was doing what he always did. Same time, same place, same order. Black coffee, no sugar, and a seat by the window where he could work on his laptop in peace. David had been coming to this coffee shop for almost 3 years now. He was a graphic designer who worked from home, and this place had become his second office. He liked the routine. It made him feel safe. After what happened with his last relationship, safe was exactly what he needed. 2 years ago, his girlfriend told him she was in love with someone else. Just like that. No warning. No signs he could see. One day, they were planning their future, and the next day she was packing her bags. It broke something inside him. Since then, he kept to himself. Work, coffee shop, home. That was his life, and he was okay with it. Then, about 4 months ago, everything changed. A new girl started working at the coffee shop. Her name was Lisa, and she was different from the start. Most baristas just took your order and moved on to the next customer, but not Lisa. When she asked how your day was going, she actually meant it. She would wait for your answer and listen like it really mattered to her. The first time David noticed her, she was training with the manager. She smiled at him while making his coffee, and it was a real smile. Not the fake customer service smile most people give. Her eyes smiled too. When she handed him his cup, she said, "I hope your day is as good as this coffee smells." It was a simple thing to say, but it made him feel seen, like he was a person, not just another customer. After that first week, Lisa started remembering things about him. When he mentioned he had a difficult client, she asked about it the next time he came in. When he looked tired, she would add an extra shot of espresso without him asking. Small things that slowly started to matter more than they should. David tried not to think too much about it at first. She was just being nice, doing her job well. That's what he told himself. But then she started writing little messages on his coffee cup. Things like, "You've got this," or "Happy Tuesday." Once, when he looked really stressed, she wrote, "Breathe. It will be okay." He kept those cups. All of them. They were in a drawer at his apartment, and he knew it was probably weird, but he couldn't throw them away. His mornings became the best part of his day. He would wake up actually looking forward to going to the coffee shop. Not for the coffee, but to see Lisa, to hear her laugh, to have those few minutes of conversation that made the whole day feel lighter. But David was scared. Really scared. The last time he let himself care about someone, it ended in pain he never wanted to feel again. What if Lisa was just being friendly? What if he read too much into her kindness? What if she already had a boyfriend, and he would look like a fool for thinking she might be interested in him? His mind kept telling him to stay safe, to keep the walls up, to enjoy what they had without asking for more. But his heart was starting to want things his mind said were too risky. About 3 months in, something happened that made it harder to ignore his feelings. It was raining again, and the coffee shop was almost empty. Lisa brought his coffee to his table instead of calling his name. She sat down for just a minute and said, "You always sit here alone. Don't you ever get lonely?" The question caught him off guard. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw genuine curiosity in her eyes. Not pity, just interest. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but lonely feels safer than hurt." Lisa nodded slowly, like she understood more than he said. "I get that," she replied, "but safe isn't always the same as happy. You know?" Before he could respond, another customer came in and she had to go back to work. But that conversation stayed with him for days. She was right. He wasn't happy. He was just existing, going through the motions, protecting himself from pain, but also keeping out any chance of joy. David started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, it was time to take a risk again. Lisa made him feel things he thought he'd never feel again. Hope. Excitement. That nervous flutter in your stomach when someone special walks into the room. But every time he thought about asking her out, fear gripped his throat, and the words wouldn't come. What if she said no? What if it made things awkward, and he couldn't come to the coffee shop anymore? What if he lost even this small connection they had? So he stayed quiet, caught between wanting more and being too afraid to ask for it. 3 months had passed since Lisa started working at the coffee shop, and David's life had completely changed without really changing at all. On the outside, everything looked the same. Same routine, same schedule, same corner table. But on the inside, he was a mess of feelings he didn't know what to do with. He started coming to the coffee shop earlier. His alarm would go off at 6:30 instead of 7:30 because he wanted to make sure he got there during Lisa's shift. He'd stay longer too, ordering a second coffee he didn't really need, just so he could have another reason to talk to her. His best friend Ryan noticed something was different. They met for dinner one evening, and David kept checking his phone for the time. He barely touched his food, his mind clearly somewhere else. "What's going on with you?" Ryan finally asked. "You've been weird for weeks now." David tried to play it off, but Ryan knew him too well. Eventually, he admitted there was someone he liked. When Ryan asked if he'd asked her out yet, David just shook his head. "Why not?" Ryan pushed. "It's complicated," David said, which wasn't really an answer at all. The truth was, Lisa's signals were driving him crazy. Sometimes, she seemed interested. Really interested. She would lean across the counter when they talked, getting close enough that he could smell her perfume. When she handed him his coffee, her fingers would touch his and linger there for a second too long. Once, their hands touched, and she looked right into his eyes, holding his gaze until another customer coughed impatiently behind him. But then, other times, she was completely professional. She'd chat with other customers the same way she chatted with him. She never suggested meeting outside the coffee shop. She never mentioned whether she was single or not. David analyzed every conversation, every look, every smile, trying to figure out if he was seeing what he wanted to see, or if it was real. The uncertainty was eating him alive. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. David walked into the coffee shop at his usual time, and Lisa wasn't there. Another barista he barely knew was working the counter. His disappointment was so strong it actually hurt in his chest. He ordered his coffee from the other girl and asked, trying to sound casual, "Is Lisa not working today?" "She took some time off," the barista replied. "Personal stuff, I think." Personal stuff. What did that mean? Was she okay? Was she sick? Was something wrong? David's mind spun with possibilities, each one worse than the last. He sat at his table but couldn't focus on any work. The coffee tasted wrong. The whole day felt wrong. For 3 days, Lisa didn't come to work. 3 days of David showing up, hoping to see her, and leaving disappointed. He felt ridiculous. He barely knew this girl, really. They'd never spent time together outside the coffee shop. They'd never had a real conversation that lasted more than 5 minutes. Why did her absence affect him so much? But it did. Those 3 days felt longer than the entire previous month. On Monday morning, Lisa was back. David's heart jumped when he saw her through the window. But when he walked in and got closer, he noticed she looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her smile seemed forced at first. Then she saw him, and her whole face changed. Her smile became real, reaching her eyes. And she said, "David, I was hoping you'd come in today." She was hoping he'd come in. Those words played in his head on repeat. "Are you okay?" he asked when he got to the counter. "I mean, I noticed you weren't here last week." Lisa's expression softened. "You noticed? That's sweet. Yeah, I'm okay. Just some family stuff I had to deal with. Nothing serious, just life. You know?" She made his coffee with extra care that day, And when she handed it to him, there was a note on the cup that said, "Thanks for caring." David went back to his table, but his hands were shaking. He had to do something. He had to tell her how he felt. His sister called him that afternoon, and he made the mistake of mentioning Lisa. His sister didn't hold back. "You're going to look back on this and hate yourself if you don't at least try," she told him. The worst thing she can say is no. But what if she says yes? Are you really going to let fear steal that from you? David decided his sister was right. He couldn't keep living like this, caught between hope and fear. The next morning, he woke up determined. Today would be the day. He would ask Lisa out properly. No more hints, no more wondering. He would be brave. He rehearsed what he would say in the shower. He practiced it while getting dressed. He even wrote it down on his phone, reading it over and over, until the words felt right. Something simple and honest. "Lisa, I really enjoy talking to you, and I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me sometime." That was it. Simple. Clear. If she said no, at least he would know and could move on with his life. David walked into the coffee shop at 8:30. His heart beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. The place was busy. The morning rush in full swing. He got in line, watching Lisa work the espresso machine with practiced ease. She was laughing at something a customer said, her ponytail swinging as she moved. He was next in line. His moment was coming. He took a deep breath, ready to say the words he'd practiced. Then the door opened behind him, and a tall guy walked in. He was handsome, well-dressed, with an easy confidence David never had. The guy walked straight past the line and right up to the counter where Lisa was working. "Hey, beautiful," the guy said loud enough for everyone to hear. Lisa looked up and her face lit up with genuine happiness. "Hey, what are you doing here? Can't a guy visit his favorite person?" The man replied, leaning across the counter. David's stomach dropped. He watched as Lisa came around the counter during her break. The man put his arm around her shoulder and kissed her cheek. They talked for a minute, both smiling, comfortable with each other in a way that spoke of real closeness. David couldn't breathe. He'd been so stupid. Of course Lisa had someone. Of course a girl like her wouldn't be single. All those signs he thought he saw. The lingering touches. The meaningful looks. They were just her being nice. Just her doing her job well. When it was finally his turn to order, Lisa was back behind the counter. She smiled at him like nothing had changed. Like his whole world hadn't just crashed down. "The usual?" she asked. David nodded, not trusting his voice. He paid, took his coffee from a different barista, and left without sitting down. Without looking back. That was it. He was done. For 2 weeks, David didn't go back to the coffee shop. He found a chain place near his apartment instead. The coffee was terrible, and the atmosphere was cold and corporate. But at least it didn't hurt. At least he didn't have to see Lisa and pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. His work suffered. He missed deadlines for the first time in his career. His apartment became a mess. He stopped answering calls from friends. He knew he was being dramatic, that he was mourning something that never even existed, but he couldn't help it. Then, 14 days after he stopped going to the coffee shop, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, David. This is Lisa from the coffee shop. I got your number from the rewards account. Sorry if that's weird. Are you okay? You haven't been in for 2 weeks and I'm really worried about you." David stared at the message for a long time. She was worried. She'd reached out. But why? What did it matter? She had that guy, whoever he was. Unless... No. He couldn't let himself hope again. Hope was what got him hurt in the first place. He didn't respond that day, or the next day, but the message stayed on his mind, pulling at him. Finally, on the 3rd day, he typed back a short reply. "I'm fine. Just been busy with work. It was a lie, and probably an obvious one, but it was all he could manage. Lisa's response came fast. That's good. I miss our morning conversations, though. They were the best part of my day. If you ever want to talk about what's really going on, I'm closing the shop alone tomorrow night at 8. Just saying. 3. Marking round progress. I marking round progress. Just saying. David read that message 20 times. The best part of my day. If you want to talk about what's really going on. Was she saying what he thought she was saying? Or was he doing it again, seeing what he wanted to see? There was only one way to find out. The next evening, David stood outside the coffee shop at 7:55. Through the window, he could see Lisa wiping down tables. The place was empty except for her. The lights were dimmed, and there was something intimate about seeing the space like this, quiet and closed off from the world. His hand was on the door handle, but he couldn't make himself pull it open. What if this was a mistake? What if she just wanted to check on him as a friend? What if that guy he saw was her boyfriend and this whole thing was going to be humiliating? But then Lisa looked up and saw him through the glass. The relief that flooded her face was impossible to miss. She quickly walked to the door and opened it herself. You came, she said, and her voice had a shake to it that David had never heard before. Yeah, he managed. I'm sorry I disappeared like that. Lisa stepped back to let him in, locking the door behind him. I was worried I did something wrong, she said quietly. One day, you were here every morning. And then suddenly, you were just gone. David didn't know what to say. How do you tell someone that seeing them with someone else broke your heart when you never told them you had feelings in the first place? I saw you, he finally said. That morning. With that guy. He kissed your cheek, and you looked so happy. And I realized I'd been fooling myself. Lisa's eyebrows pulled together in confusion. Then, understanding dawned on her face. Wait. You mean Carlos? I don't know his name. Tall guy, well-dressed, came in and called you beautiful. Oh my God, Lisa said, and suddenly she was laughing. Not mean laughter, but the kind of relieved laughter that comes when a huge misunderstanding finally makes sense. David, that's my brother. Carlos is my older brother. He came to visit from Austin for the weekend. David felt like the floor had disappeared under his feet. Your brother? Yes. My annoying, overprotective, embarrassing brother who thinks it's funny to flirt with me in public to make me uncomfortable. Lisa stepped closer to him. Is that why you left? Because you thought. I thought you had a boyfriend, David admitted, feeling foolish but also like a weight had been lifted off his chest. I was about to ask you out that morning, and then I saw you with him, and I couldn't do it. Lisa's eyes went wide. You were going to ask me out? Yeah. I was terrified, but I was going to do it. The coffee shop felt very quiet suddenly. They stood there in the dim lighting, just a few feet apart. Lisa's expression changed, becoming vulnerable in a way David had never seen before. Can I tell you something? She asked softly. I've been trying to figure out how to do this for months now. There's this line, you know, between barista and customer. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable or abuse my position or whatever. I kept hoping you would make a move so I wouldn't have to cross that line myself. David's heart was pounding again, but this time with hope instead of fear. Lisa, what are you saying? I'm saying that you've been the best part of my mornings for the past 4 months. Not just because you're a nice customer or because you tip well, but because talking to you feels different. You actually listen when I talk. You remember things. You make me laugh. She took a shaky breath, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I kept writing those notes on your cups hoping you'd get the message. I kept finding excuses to touch your hand or lean close to you. I even asked my manager if there was a policy about dating customers, and she said, as long as it's not inappropriate, It's fine. But you never made a move, and I thought maybe I was wrong about you feeling the same way. David couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. All this time, while he was holding back out of fear, Lisa had been doing the same thing. They'd both been waiting. Both been hoping. Both been too scared to risk what they had for the chance of something more. You asked your manager about dating customers? He repeated, needing to make sure he understood correctly. Lisa laughed nervously. Yeah, pretty obvious, right? She probably thought I was ridiculous. I kept all the cups, David blurted out. The ones with your notes on them. They're in a drawer in my apartment. All of them. Now it was Lisa's turn to look surprised. Really? Really. I know it's weird, but they made me happy, and I couldn't throw them away. They looked at each other, and suddenly both of them were laughing. All the tension, all the misunderstandings, all the wasted time, it all seemed absurd now. How had they let fear keep them apart for so long? So, Lisa said, her voice still shaking a little, but her eyes bright with something that looked a lot like happiness. Just to be completely clear, because I don't want any more misunderstandings. Do you like me, David? Like, more than just as a barista who makes good coffee? David took a step closer to her. Then, another. Until they were standing close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. I've been falling for you since the day you remembered I don't like cinnamon in my coffee. Since the day you wrote, "You've got this" on my cup when I was stressed about a deadline. Since the first real smile you gave me, I was just too scared to risk losing what we had. And now? Lisa whispered. Now I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. The way she looked at him in that moment was something David would remember forever. Her eyes were full of hope and joy and relief, and something deeper he didn't have words for yet. It was a look that said finally, and yes, and I was hoping you'd say that all at once. He couldn't hold back anymore. David reached up and gently cupped Lisa's face in his hands. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing for just a second before opening again to meet his gaze. Can I kiss you? He asked, because he needed to make sure this was really okay. I thought you'd never ask, she replied with a smile. When their lips met, it felt like everything clicked into place. All the careful distance they'd maintained, all the loaded glances they'd shared, all the unspoken words finally had a voice. David felt Lisa's smile against his mouth and heard her soft laugh, and his heart felt fuller than it had in years. They pulled back after a moment, both slightly breathless. Lisa's hands were clutching his jacket, and she had tears in her eyes, but she was smiling wider than he'd ever seen. So, she said, a little breathless, would you like to go on an actual date with me? Somewhere that's not this coffee shop, where we've been dancing around each other for 4 months? David grinned. I would love nothing more. How about tomorrow night? There's this Italian place downtown I've been wanting to try. Tomorrow night is perfect. They stood there for a while longer, just holding each other in the empty coffee shop. Lisa eventually had to finish closing, and David helped her. Something domestic and comfortable about the way they moved around each other in the space that had brought them together. As they left together that night, David realized something important. His fear had almost cost him everything. He'd spent 2 years building walls to protect himself from getting hurt again, and those walls had nearly kept out the best thing that could have happened to him. But sometimes, when someone looks at you the way Lisa looked at him that night, with openness and vulnerability and hope, you find courage you didn't know you had. You realize that being safe isn't the same as being happy. You understand that the risk of pain is worth it for the chance at real connection. 3 months later, David still went to the coffee shop every morning. But now, Lisa sat with him during her breaks. Now, they had dinner together most nights. Now his apartment had her favorite tea in the cupboard and her toothbrush by the sink. And every morning, even though she didn't work behind the counter anymore, on the days he came in, Lisa still wrote little notes on his coffee cups. Things like, "Love you," and "Can't wait for tonight," and "You're my favorite person." David still kept every single one.